5, 7 o'clock, let's call this meeting to order, please. Everyone, please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Here.
Pelosino.
Present.
Pat.
Here.
Wojcicki.
Here.
Reuters.
Here.
Bunkhauser.
Here.
Chirulis.
Here.
Teeling.
Here.
A quorum is established.
Any amendments to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we'll go right into presentations. We have a 2016 audit presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're here tonight to present the comprehensive annual financial report for the 12 months ended April 30th, 2016. I'm not sure if everyone has available in front of them the large bound document with the logo on the front. Tonight I'll briefly give an overview of the audit process as well as the results of the audit. I know Bart is going to give a more detailed presentation with regards to some of the numbers for the fiscal year ended. First of all, from the council's perspective, this is a 6-month process from start to finish. We begin with our planning phases, going into our testing phase, and then basically our draft process, which ends tonight with the final comprehensive annual financial report presented to you. That 6-month process certainly doesn't happen without a coordinated effort from staff here. When we came in to do our testing, we had not a single journal entry detected as part of that testing. I have to tell you, it makes my life really happy to come to be able to tell a board that we have no journal entries as part of our process. That is absolutely not the norm with municipal audits. And so certainly be evidence of Rob and his team's hard efforts in preparing for the audit. Also, you'll find that the city was awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. There is a copy of that award presented in the introductory section of that large bound document. Just a reminder, this is a third-party review of the financial statements. This is really the highest level reporting that we have for governmental accounting standards. And so again, to receive the award and for staff to put in the time and energy to make those requirements, certainly kudos to both City Council and staff as well. You'll find on page 1 and 2 of the document, so if you flip back about 10 pages or so, you'll find the audit opinion. The city was issued what we call an unmodified audit opinion. That is the highest level we are able to issue. That means the financial statements as presented are materially correct. Okay? There's a very important section right after that audit opinion, and you should see that labeled Management's Discussion and Analysis. You'll find 12 pages labeled here MD&A 1 through 12 at the bottom. This is really what we consider to be the executive summary to the audit. It is a very large document. There are a lot of numbers and disclosures. Staff has really done an excellent job of really highlighting some of the key transactions for the year, focusing on revenue and expenditure trends, investments in capital assets, and long-term debt activity. So really a nice, concise place within 12 pages to get a good snapshot of the results for this fiscal year. The last section I want to point out is what we call our statistical section. That will begin on page 125. So we're skipping a good chunk because that's really what Bart's going to cover in his presentation as well. But page 125 starts our statistical section. Here you'll find 10 years of trend information, starting with financial data, moving into revenue data, so property tax information, for example. Then you'll move into long-term debt activity for the last 10 years, and then culminating with operating indicators, number of employees, capital asset statistics. So really a wealth of information at the back of the report. If you're curious as to what EAV may have been 5 years ago, for example, you'll be able to find that information here starting at page 125. The cleanliness of the audit is also evidenced by the smaller bound document you have before you, which is what we call our management letter. You'll see in the management letter, we actually had no new recommendations for this year. The first prior recommendation was with regards to the implementation of a governmental accounting standards board requirement, and that is what we call GASB 68. That has been in your management letter for the last couple of years as a warning that it was coming. This is the year in which the city was required to report any unfunded pension obligations on the actual face of the balance sheet. So just a reminder, those have always been fully disclosed, but this was the year in which we actually had to translate those numbers to the balance sheet. So the city has fully complied with that requirement. The second comment was with regards to funds in deficit position. These are predominantly special service area and TIF-related type activities, so we would obviously expect at the early part of the life of those projects that we may be in deficit position. So this is really just a housekeeping type of comment. We've provided an update there for this year of where those balances are for the fiscal year ended April 30th. And certainly we'll continue to monitor those as we move forward. So again, really nothing to report to City Council tonight because it was a very clean audit process. I can't thank Rob and his staff enough for all their hard work. And I believe Bart's going to go into some more details, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Anyone? No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is going to look familiar, I think, to everybody. Because everybody's been here more than a couple years now. And I keep saying that I'm going to change the format of this presentation, but we keep doing so well that I don't want to change it. So a little superstition there. Again, we talked about the awards. It's our fifth time in a row that Rob and his staff have put together an audit that's qualified for the top award, really, for an audit. So that's great. Something we will strive forward again with this year's audit. So just we've actually finally come full picture. So you've got 11 years worth of financial history there, from a stated fund balance of almost $6 million in 2006 up to almost $6 million in 2016. So again, the clarifications on those are really, in the beginning, we weren't as good as we thought that we were because we had bond issuances mingled into our general fund, and we had bad debt that we didn't know about. And then finally wrote off in 10 and 11 when we kind of cratered. And since then, we've been dealing with fund deficits. And really, there are still fund deficits, even in fiscal year 16. We just talked about it in the countryside. We're finally actually on our way up on that one because the property tax revenues are going to exceed the debt service issuance this year, which is a wonderful thing. And as the project takes off, it's going to be even better. So we're continuing to eliminate that. And then in 12 and 13, obviously we didn't have as big of countryside problems. That was more rec center issues and a couple other funds. So we're back where we were 11 years ago. So that's great. And then on the actual surplus deficit for the general fund, again, we've been a little bit all over the map in the past 10 or 11 years. But things have been progressively better because we've been so conservative with our revenue and expenditure estimates on the budget side. So, in 14, 15, 16, we actually didn't really plan to do that well. Even in 14, when we had a modest surplus, or a modest deficit, we'd actually planned for a bigger deficit. So we've been outperforming our budget estimates, which is great. And even in 6, 7, and 8, when we showed these numbers, things were a little bit skewed just if you were to just take the snapshot because we were, again, commingling basically capital funds at that time into our general fund. So it didn't really give an accurate budgetary picture at the time. So, okay, just looking at all of our revenue, our largest items, we basically outperformed on almost every one of them, and especially the ones you really want to outperform on. Income tax, which is out of our control, but that's at the state level, so the state did not take any income taxes away from us, and then the state's economy had actually done slightly better than even the IML had projected, which is great. And then sales taxes are the big one. We talk about it at admin every month, but we just had our largest sales tax month ever in the city. In last month, it's being driven, we think, by building materials being sold at some of our local hardware stores. Anytime you have a June peak to the year, that's generally tied to construction, which is good because our other peak month is December, so that's consumer purchases. So we do have a fairly diversified, sales tax base, whereas it used to be all just building. So, but each one of the numbers are up there. Property tax is a little bit under each year just because of the way they collect, the way we have to estimate, but it's within spitting distance of what's considered reasonable. So on the expenditure side, each year we've kind of, generally had very good performance by each one of the department heads, and then there's always a couple explanations on a couple of the departments. And this year, really the only one to talk about is the sewer operations department, and the reason that's at $526,000 of expenditures compared to 507 budget is because of the way we calculate the build program. So again, it doesn't have a net impact on the budget, but when you just look at the expenditure side, it's a little bit higher than it's expected to be. So every single one of the departments, again, is staying within their line item budgets. We're able to basically make the decisions mid-year as things come up. And the chief and I were actually talking about this earlier in the week about there really hasn't been anything that's come up mid-year that we've said, this has to get done, or oops, we forgot about it, or something broke, and we're scrambling to make cuts to vital services. It's all, okay, we have some contingency built in on different line items, or we can shuffle things around. And so there's very little time spent from a management perspective, scrambling from a budgetary perspective to make cuts, and yet we're still way under on our departments, which is great. So that means the departments aren't spending up to their limits, and they're also being very good in their decision-making capabilities. So, and again, our general fund performance, we were expecting this to be an even year, and we came out $865,000 ahead. So the shocking thing to me each year, like 3 or 4 years in a row, has been revenues and expenditures have consistently been between like $300,000 and $400,000 generally to the good side on each side. So it's not like we're being wildly conservative on our revenues, or that we're inflating our expenditures. It's a combination really of conservative budgeting and then just good decision-making process, and that's adding up over time. I mean, we're hitting 40% fund balances, which is above our threshold, and it results in things like bond rating increases, which then saves us money and allows us to do even more projects. So things are going pretty good. Onto some of the details. Each year we've done the engineering cost analysis, and then we talk about it as part of the budget proposal. So again, the actual in-house comparison for fiscal year 16 only ended up being $400,000. So, less time is being spent, obviously, because it's at a higher hourly rate than we used to, but we are still spending less money in things that we used to be able to do in-house. Another $60,000 in reimbursed work, and then this number obviously is very large, $1.2 million for capital projects, but that's things like Countryside, Route 47, other things that we would have had to outsource anyway. So the fact that we're able to afford these, and they're in the budget, and we're still doing so well, is a significant sign of progress in my mind as to the decision-making that's been happening at city council level. So that's great. We had talked about a little bit of the items to note in the stat section on the back end. So here's the different pages for pensions and fund balance categories and amounts. And, in past years, if you would have looked at fund balances, you would have seen different qualifications in there that might have made you, have a little light bulb in your head and said, well, was that bad debt? So there's $1.2 million in restricted amount in there this year. It's really kind of just a paper number. In short, the sub-levy that we've been doing each year as part of our tax levy process for IMRF has been slightly higher than what we've actually been paying. So the auditors basically just said, well, you have $1.2 million worth of funds that should have gone to IMRF that didn't, and so all that means is in the next 3 to 4 years we adjust our sub-levy and direct more to the general fund as opposed to the IMRF, and that'll get zeroed out. So that there isn't really an issue there, other than it has to be reported like that. Long-term debt, developer commitments we talked about, historical trends, again, 10 years. There's some nice graphics in the actual audit. I didn't want to plug them into the spreadsheet here. Employee counts, even though I think we were actually budgeted for 76 when we took the snapshot for the audit, we had made some strategic hiring decisions while the state was going through their decision-making process. So we're actually down at 74, which I think is actually one less than we had when we did the audit last year. So even though things are going so well, we're still trying to be conservative in our decision-making process when we're filling new positions. So, and then some other traffic violations, permits issued, et cetera, are all in there too. So along those lines, and you'll hear it as part of the goal-setting session and some of the things we'll be doing in the budget proposal, but we're going to take that stat section and basically put it on steroids in the next year or so. We're going to do some performance measurement and metrics for all the departments, a couple hundred different data points that we'll be able to track and use to make decisions in the future. And that's something we've just been working on in-house for the past several months. Again, management letter, no recommendations this year, and the 2 recommendations from the year prior. We've addressed in one way or another. So GASB 67 and 68, again, if you ever want to have a good conversation with Rob about that, I'm sure he'd love to. And then the funds with deficit equity, again, we talked about as being countryside. And technically, Fox Hill and Sunflower, through what we did when we paid for those projects up front out of our own pocket and let the residents pay it back over a number of years, that is deficit equity. So it's something that we have to put in the audit, but it's to the tune of $10,000 or $20,000, so not a huge amount. So next steps. We've completed our audit. Every year we go through and roll right into our tax levy discussion. Just previewing that, it's going to be an interesting year. Every year we've been talking about what should we do with the library levy and applying the property tax cap, and it's really been moot once the CPI gets published and EAV gets published. EAV has gone up 10% citywide from year to year. So if we do nothing else and the library levies 0.15 or 15 cents per $100 EAV, they're going to get a lot more money this year than they got last year to the city's detriment. So that's something that we have to talk about with the library board over the next couple months before we vote on everything in December. And then the budget rollout is already starting to occur. You actually have handouts on your desk for the goal setting session, which is in 2.5 weeks. There's a nice goal setting review from Nicole. She had drafted that herself actually. Compares everything from last year and our recommendations for the upcoming year, where we're at with them. And then there's also an early kind of budget preview. So instead of going around the room and having each department head talk about what they want to do the next year and their requests, we put it in writing for you. That way you've got 2.5 weeks basically to study it before the meeting. We don't need to get into it in depth, but just so you're aware that of the conversations that are happening really already in preparation for a January 31st budget rollout. So, any questions on the actual audit? All right, thank you.
We chant Rob's name.
Yeah, really.
Absolutely.
Ready,
We
guys?
hoist them on our
Rob,
shoulders.
Rob, 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 woo! Nice job. Come on.
He's our golden boy.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Whole building today.
Okay, we have no public hearings. Do we have any citizen comments on anything that's on the agenda this evening? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. So moved. Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Colesimo,
Aye.
Wilczewski,
Aye.
Rulis,
Aye.
Ritter,
Aye.
Lancaster,
Aye.
Coe,
Aye.
Sealing, Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, we have a couple of sets of minutes to approve. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting of September 13th, 2016, and September 27th, 2016, as presented.
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions or corrections on the minutes?
There was just, in the September 27th meeting minutes, under Administration Committee, reading home rule, regarding home rule powers, there's a line in there that says, what was it? The taxing power is not something that can be surprised upon the people. I don't remember what we said, but it wasn't surprised. Surprise! Is that what is that what we said? I don't know if you could just check it.
I'll be happy to.
Yeah,
You review it.
yeah, thank
But
you.
leave it in the, is that what you said, or do you want me to change it?
Well, if that's what we said, sure, but I don't remember that, so just, it's surprised.
I didn't sleep very well the night before. It could have actually been surprise. My apologies.
Thank you. Otherwise, yeah, that's fine.
Anything else on the minutes? Now, all those in favor of approving the minutes as corrected, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving on to mayor's report. I have a very long motion here to read. I'll entertain a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2016, of the United City of Yorkville, Kendall County, Illinois, in the aggregate principal amount of $8,500,000 for the purpose of refunding certain of the city's outstanding debt certificates and alternate revenue bonds, authorizing the execution of an escrow agreement in connection therewith, providing for the imposition of taxes to pay the same, and for the collection, segregation, and distribution of certain city revenues for the payment of said bonds, and the abatement of a portion of taxes previously levied, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I think it's great.
All great news.
Saves a lot of money.
It saves a lot of money. Okay, roll call, please.
Cut.
Aye.
Reuters.
Aye.
Squirreless.
Aye.
Solicitor.
Aye.
Funkasser.
Aye.
Krzyzewski.
Aye.
Teeling. Coe.
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion to approve a waiver of the building permit fees for lot 314 in the Autumn Creek subdivision.
So moved. Second.
Comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Reuters.
Aye.
Squirreless.
Aye.
Solicitor.
Aye.
Funkasser.
Aye.
Krzyzewski.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Coe.
Aye.
Cut.
Aye.
Motion passes.
There is no Public Works Committee report. I will turn it over to Alderman Koch for the Economic Development Committee report.
I need a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing a judicial boundary line agreement between the United City of Yorkville and the Village of Sugar Grove, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
Second.
Comments or questions on the border boundary agreement? Yes, sir.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. How does this new agreement affect the road work that needs to be done along, I think it's on the bridge?
It doesn't really. It simply sets the boundary to where each municipality could annex. By virtue of us already having annexed up to the bridge at baseline, we control the roadway for all intents and purposes until Sugar Grove gets there too. So I don't know how many miles away they still are, but it's a significant distance. So fortunately, that's our responsibility.
Can we gift it to them?
No, I would gift it to anybody that wants it. Yeah, we looked at, like I mentioned, we've looked at de-annexing it, trying to get it back to the township, turning it over to the state, closing it has been in the budget, obviously, a couple of the times. So, it's something that hasn't fully hit a deadline yet because we haven't had a bad inspection that would result in us closing it. But, it's something that we're watching.
You go out to bid like with the caboose.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Yeah, I like the line right where it is because I have no interest in leading our fair city into the fine county of Kane. So I am happy stopping at the county line. I don't want to be a two-county city. Right, Rich?
Yes. It would complicate things very nicely for us.
Can you imagine the elections with the different recorder's office, county clerk's offices?
Okay, anything else on the boundary agreement? Roll call, please.
Squirreless.
Aye.
Solicitor.
Aye.
Funkelsler.
Aye.
Olszewski.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Koch.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Reyes.
Aye.
There's no Public Safety Committee report. I will turn it over to Alderman Olszewski for the Administration Committee report.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Oswego and the United City of Yorkville regarding joint employment of a purchasing manager and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute.
Second.
Comments or questions? Yes, sir.
I read through this and maybe I missed it, but is there a ceiling on our share of the salary?
No, it's 50%, so.
I understand that.
It's a
but-
percentage based, so if we hire somebody at, I forget what the exact range is, let's say $75,000 a year, got capital costs on top of that, pensions, all the other soft costs that they'll calculate for us. You know, we always have the ability to tell them, no thanks, we're just not going to pay for it from the get-go if something gets out of hand, but I don't expect it to. We only have $50,000 budgeted in the current year, which again will be prorated, because I don't expect to hire this person until March. And then we had shifted those funds for the assistant city administrator in the meantime.
Yes, sir.
So in a case that something would sour and things would go really bad in this, because it's a 5-year commitment, 2021, right?
6 months out.
Yeah, there's a 6-month out, and both Dan and I have talked about this at length in our different meetings. And, you know, really, if it just stops working, you know, although I wouldn't want to say that we would come to an agreement to terminate it immediately, you know, my guess is that neither one of us would want to incur legal fees to sue each other, and so it would probably fall apart relatively quickly before 6 months. But I don't foresee anything happening where one of us would have cold feet as much as, you know, maybe we hire the wrong person, or something goes wrong, or it just turns out that it's not saving us money. Those are more likely the threats, in my opinion, that would make this go south.
Yes, sir.
You know, I like the idea of trying it, you know, in IML and things like that, when we go to these conferences, the big thing is now sharing these services. It's like, you know, why 3 small municipalities each have a separate person who does the exact same thing, and that person can actually cover all 3 or all 2 municipalities and save the taxpayers money and avoid duplication of services. I like is it's a safe way to try it. It's a position that's a very safe and comfortable area that we're going to try it in. We do have a 6-month out, and if it works, that can lead to future relationships and savings for both the residents of Oswego and Yorkville. And if it doesn't work, we can say, hey, we tried, it didn't work this time, and go our separate ways and hopefully separate amicably. So hopefully it works. I do support it. I'd like to give this a try, and hopefully we can expand this in the future if it works.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I had a question because I was at work when I was meeting. Sorry. So forgive me. Who's our purchasing manager now?
We don't have,
Right. And
So-
what departments would they be purchasing for every department?
Yeah.
Including Parks and Rec, because they don't have Parks and Rec.
yeah,
They don't have, they have a park district.
correct.
So how does that, so would this purchasing manager be the one that, if we go out for bid on like a playground, that purchasing manager would buy that?
Yeah.
So do they have other departments that would make up for that lack of, because that
I
seems like a
don't
big
think they
one.
have any departments that we don't have, but they have more employees in general, and they spend a lot more money. So they have a larger budget than we do. And that was something that had come up where basically, you know, task 1 is not necessarily tracking your time, but kind of your effort and project numbers and total dollar amounts and time to figure out, you know, which community is getting the larger share for that first year, and then prorating that accordingly afterwards. So it may be that, you know, for whatever reason, our department heads are more comfortable, you know, doing bidding processes, or they're, you know, maybe we're shoehorning all of them into this year because Aaron is doing 20,000 of them, and you know there aren't as many to do next year. So maybe the split ends up being 80-20. So that's something we have to analyze midway through the process, and then figure out if the 50-50 split is fair.
So basically, right now, our department heads are doing all the bidding and purchasing.
Yeah, it's either centralized under admin, so Aaron is doing a lot of it currently, or I have been, or Nicole has been, and then some of it has been decentralized. So state bids with police, public works, parks, that's kind of been under the department, but the salt delivery system and the large dump trucks that we purchased, those were not under state bid. Sewer vac wasn't under state bid, correct? So that was something that Eric had to go out and research, figure out who the best vendors were, coordinate the quotes, coordinate the formal bidding process. So there was a lot of effort spent on him doing administrative work that he could have been, doing some high-level leadership ways instead.
So there's a new position that we consider creating here?
Yes. We looked at it under the CMAP shared services study and said, this position makes sense to try first because there's actually potentially a net savings to the city in doing so. So not only if we bid out something better than we would under our current existing staff, you have the ability, like on a sewer bag truck, to save tens of thousands of dollars in one shot, but then you're also shoving work down in the organizational chart. So you have, this person would make less than the department heads. So they're doing that work probably at a higher level than we can. And so then we're freed up to do higher level managerial. So those are soft costs, but there's a real benefit to the city in doing so. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry you missed the meeting, it was riveting. If you missed the minutes, one of the things that keeps coming up when I read about the CMAT meetings and stuff like that is that these are all kind of staff-directed ideas on how to kind of better manage their own time. So when this one came forward, it kind of made sense because you have staff who is being held accountable by elected officials, and they're the ones who can get fired. So when they come up with an idea that can basically better allow them to do their job without kind of stressing them out and making them have to perform the jobs of a purchasing manager, I think this is just like a small example of the potential of these kinds of ideas that come forward. So you have people that they have to hit us, they have metrics they have to follow, whereas we can be as good looking as we are right now and have no one to kind of take us out. So when they were talking about this idea between them, number one, to get along with Oswego and Montgomery really well. We're already talking about them with the water. This type of start is almost exactly the kind of mentality we have to have moving forward if we want to make a super large investment between the three communities, because we can't keep assuming that just because we have someone and we have to pay them all of their pension and health insurance and all that stuff that comes with it. If we can spread that out amongst two communities, you don't have someone sitting there with not enough to do, you have someone with plenty to do. But then you also have not only our 8 aldermen, you have all 50,000 Oswego trustees that are also looking over them. So if you think about it, this is a really good way of making sure that one person performs to the standards of 2 separate city councils. So I think it's a really cool idea. I think we should do more of it. So don't screw this up.
And yes,
On the don't screw this up, what's your plan for reporting back on this one? As you mentioned, you're going to make some assessments of the program. How do you feel that that's going to happen?
Yeah, I would imagine that it's going to, at minimum, informally occur every month at admin. I don't know if it necessarily needs an agenda item, but we're blazing new trails with this hire in kind of all 3 communities being in growth mode, identifying needs, and then splitting the cost of an employee to plan out these things. So if anything, I'm actually really excited to talk about it and say that yes, it's working, and yes, we're saving a ton of money, and it's yielding some big efficiencies. So formally, I would say quarterly at City Council. One of the things I don't want to do is if I have a rolling 6-month out available to me, the minute that I start to identify some issues with it, I'd like to be able to tell you soon thereafter, we need to watch this, and basically here's the plan of attack that we're working, and if it just doesn't work, it falls apart, then, we need to pass the ordinance or whatever that says we're going to stop doing it.
That's good. I want to make sure, as Alderman Frieder said, don't mess this up. I would like for the municipal circles to be talking about our shared services program that it's successful in a few years. I really hope that it is the case.
Bart will be presenting it out, IML next year.
Absolutely. Let's hope so.
Well, maybe IML, but I am actually presenting with Oswego and Montgomery next Friday down at Grundy County. They have a community foundation. It's a whole bunch of government entities that get together, and so they had heard about our CMAP study and what we're doing, and they asked us to come down and give a presentation on that. So we volunteered to do that. We're working on it. So the message is getting out there, especially like if you're in a growth community. You know, rather than hiring one person per municipality, why don't you split it 3 ways and figure it out?
Yeah, one of the things that we have coming up in a couple weeks is the goal-setting session. Remember, the last 2 years, we've all said mechanic, forester, which I need just in my own life. But those 2 things, I mean, it's not like a full-time position, but it's busy enough where if we had like a roaming mechanic through Yorkville and Montgomery, that's a really cool freaking idea.
That's actually on the spreadsheet of budget, early budget requests. And what, again, early indication, Montgomery and Oswego already have a mechanic, so they don't want to necessarily share theirs with us because they have so much work. But what they said was, we'll talk about the specialties that our guys have, and they want us to hire somebody who has a specialty that they don't have, and then we can basically trade them, okay? And then the forester, we're looking at, because that's kind of a new position that neither one has, attention based, we're talking about it a lot in public works. But the big one that I think is actually going to be like the easiest is a building and grounds person. To just hire somebody high level to say, you have 200 building campuses basically between the 3 municipalities. You've got, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of acres, and, we need to hire somebody high level enough that can say, okay, I've managed, a large campus before, you need to do this and this and this, and we're gonna have to staff it up in this way, and then that way there's a coordinated effort from the municipalities. So this thing has really taken off. Actually, in the past few months, we just haven't got to the point where, some of the details have been fleshed out fully to be able to present to you. So it's very exciting.
Is staff it up something that you say all the time?
Yes.
Staff it up. It's all nice.
Lingo.
Got it. It's a new cliche.
Anything else? Well, yes.
I was just gonna say that I agree that shared services are awesome. We should probably get.
Then I'm voting for it. Then I'm voting for it, if you agree there.
Roll call.
Delosino,
Aye.
Funkhauser,
Aye.
Olszewski,
Aye.
Teeling,
Aye.
Hope,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Winters,
Aye.
Toulouse.
Aye.
You have one more,
I
JP?
got one more. I'd like to make a motion to approve a memorandum of agreement between the United City of Yorkville and the U.S. Census Bureau for a special census and authorize the city administrator to execute.
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
We need a
I
second.
made the motion.
Comments or questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
Just for the people who are watching, when people, the example in our packet is the motor fuel tax, obviously, based on the population. Sometimes people believe that if you go to Plano and put gas in your car, Plano gets more money, or if you go to Yorkville and put gas in your car, Yorkville gets more money, and that's not how it works. I mean, it all goes into a big pool, and it goes based on population. So, I mean, if we can show that our population has gone up, we'll get more of the pool. Even though we're going to spend $150,000 or so on the census, the estimates just in motor fuel tax alone are that between now and 2020, we'll get another $637,000 in motor fuel taxes to the city of Yorkville. That's a lot of money. It's a $500,000 gain just for doing something that we already know that our population has increased since 2010. So I think it's a great idea. I don't like putting out the $150,000, but I think it will absolutely make up the $150,000 and then some to benefit us in the long run. So I wholeheartedly support it.
Anyone else? Yes.
What's the likelihood that we actually have 25,000 residents and we're automatically home rule?
0.
Just had to put that out there.
Roll call, please. Oh, no.
I'm just gonna say this, keep in mind, this is a side benefit to the build program. Seriously, we wouldn't be looking at these numbers if we didn't have that program.
And probably wouldn't hit the sales tax numbers we hit this last month either. Without those programs. Roll call, please.
Hofstadter.
Aye.
Hashusky.
Aye.
Teely.
Aye.
Coe.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Winters.
Aye.
Rulis.
Aye.
Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Okay, anything from Park Board? No planning and zoning? City Council, no city council reports, city clerk's report? Any community and liaison reports?
I'll just be real brief.
Go ahead, Chris.
In the past few weeks with the CVB, been meeting with some of the stakeholders, the hotel management and ownership, as well as Raging Waves ownership and management. Very good discussions. Tomorrow morning, the CVB board has a special meeting for a vote on some proposals, which will be coming forward to the admin committee. But one thing I want to bring up out of the Raging Waves meeting is they gave some accolades to the police department for their engagement with them in terms of trying to proactively work with them for a community policing aspect. Credit to Chief and his officers for working with them and trying to make the best of the relationship. So just want to pass it along.
Anything else? Any staff reports?
Reports?
Additional business? Okay, we do have executive session for closed session minutes. I think we're doing litigation update and acquisition of real property. After executive session, there will be no further business.
Can we give it up to Rob again?
Rob, did you ever think when you majored in accounting that you'd have a choir of people chanting your name?
Never do.
Read me.